Hello, this is Susan Kilmer. In this video, which is number 5 in our series, I'm going to talk about 3 ways to do footnotes. So footnotes are necessary to a document unless the student says they aren't, then we will leave them out, but generally we need to include them. In this document, I'm going to pull up the original PDF. This document has quite a few footnotes in it. So here's one on the very first page, here's one on the second page, here's one on the third page. So footnotes are important. A student doing, in-depth study is going to need to know what some of these references are, etc. So we do want to include them. But how do we include them in a way that works for the student? So again, there's 3 different ways to do this, and it does depend on what output you're coming to the student with in the end. Okay, so this one, the basic one would be for a sighted student who's using a text-to-speech reader. We're going to use the footnoting tool in Microsoft Word to do this. Now, it is not the most accessible way of doing footnotes for a student using a screen reader because they do have to seek and find out those footnotes on their own. So this isn't a method I would use for a student who is vision impaired and using a screen reader. So the first method, and we're back to our lovely document here on the nature of persuasion. Our first document we're going to actually use the footnoting tool in Microsoft Word. So first of all, I want to look and see there is a footnote. I know that it's there. And then I want to find where the footnote actually is mentioned in the document, which is right up here towards the top. So the footnoting tool in Microsoft Word is under the References tab. So you're going to activate the References tab, and you're going to delete that number that's already in the document. And you're going to use the Insert Footnote tool to automatically put that number in. Now if I look, it's right there. It is right there. It takes us to the bottom of the page, which is where the footnote needs to be. Now, it didn't pick this up. It didn't know this was a footnote and know how to do it, but I do. I'm going to click and drag to highlight the text. Now, there is a little trick here that is extremely important. At the end of every paragraph, there's a paragraph break. And it's right there. When I move my mouse, I'm actually highlighting it. If I were to turn on the tool that shows me formatting in a document, which is this little P, backwards P up in the home ribbon. Okay, so if I turn that on to take a look, I can see there's that page break there. And if I select that page break and move this down, just click and drag it down to where the footnote belongs, I'm actually going to collect an extra space and an extra line break, and it will not adjust the font to match the footnote. The footnote should be a much smaller font than the rest of the document. So when I'm selecting, I want to make sure I do not grab that empty space. Now, most of us are not going to work with this feature on because it is distracting. So just know that when you're selecting text, you get to the end of a line where there would be a paragraph break. Remember, there is a paragraph break, and back up just enough so that you're only selecting the text and not that paragraph break that's right after it. So now I can click and drag this highlighted text, put it down here where it belongs. I could have also copied it and pasted it and then deleted the original. Now we still don't want this number 1 sitting up here, so we're going to get rid of that. So we've taken care of the first footnote. So let's go to our second page. And we're going to look for where is that number 2, right? We know there's a number 2 here somewhere. If you can't find it, you can always use the search tool over here. And it is actually right here at the bottom. So again, I'm going to delete that number, activate my References tab, insert footnote, automatically puts number 2 in there. Yay. I don't have to think about that. Select this, don't grab that extra space at the end, drag that down, and remove that original footnote number 2 dot whatever at the bottom. So here's number 3, delete the 3, insert footnote, click and drag and pull that down there, delete that 3. So this is the easy way to do it, and it does create a document that looks pretty, which for A student who's visual is sometimes important, and it also is not necessarily disruptive to their reading, but it includes all of that information. So that's the first way to do it. The second way to do it is for a student who is vision impaired. They need to know that the footnote's there. They're not going to see it easily if we're using the references tool, but also they can be disruptive. And so we have to make sure when we're doing them this way that we alert the student that something is different, so they know there's something different and that they're not reading the regular text. And they can skip it then, of course, if they want to. So in this case, I'm not going to use that references insert footnote tool. So first I'm going to find my footnote in the document. So there's my number 1 there. And what I want to do is to separate that number 1 from the end of the sentence, which will cause a pause as the student is listening to the document. And I'm going to surround this number with a bracket. Okay, and I have actually a macro designed to do these surrounds for me, so it saves me a little bit of time when I'm going through a document that has a lot of footnotes. But I'm going to put those brackets in there, so now we have a pause. If they have the extra formatting turned on in JAWS or NVDA, they will hear it say that there's a bracket here. So now they know, oh, that's something different. It's not just a random number 1 in the middle of a paragraph. And then I'm going to go down here to where my footnote is, where the text appears. And the first thing I want to do is to let that listener know that something is coming up. And so I do this by, in parentheses, continues on next page. You can also use continued with a D. Just be consistent, whatever you're going to do. I'm going to create a new line, and I'm going to say, oh, here's what's coming next. Footnote. So I'm going to put my footnote in there, and then I'm going to put a bracket around the number here. So there's a consistency between the bracket I put around the original footnote marking and the actual footnote. Now after this, the page is going to break. They're going to hear they're on page 4, so they're back to the text of the document. They were told it was going to continue. Here's the footnote, then the page number. They're just going to move on from there. So let's find footnote number 2. Which is down here at the bottom. Again, I'm going to put a bracket around that. I'm using my macro to do that. And here, and I actually have a macro for that too. And footnote, and I have a macro for that too. That makes it quicker for me. And then bracket here, remove the little period. We've created that footnote properly. So here is number 3. I did just do one more. Bracket around the 3. And continues on next page, footnote, and a bracket around that, and delete the period. So now our footnotes are in place, and you can see that this created just a little issue because we have a blank page there. This is because the text extended far enough to force an extra page break. This is going to happen sometimes, and so when I turn on this view formatting tool, so I can kind of see what's going on, figure out where my page break went, and it actually got pushed to the next page, but there is space to bring it back. So I'm just going to delete that extra paragraph mark, and now the page break is where it belongs. Just got to watch for some of those things as you're moving through a document. So we'll do just one more here, the bracket here, and footnote. Okay, so we are moving along. So that's your second method. So your third method would be for a student who prefers HTML or a Word document with links. And links are a really cool way of doing these because as the student's reading, they can stop and view that link and listen to that footnote. And I learned this not too long ago, maybe a year or so ago. I learned how to do this, and I really think that this is a great method for doing footnotes. So this is the document where we have the inline page numbers and no page breaks. You can do this in that previous document where you had page breaks as well. You can still do the links. So the linking is really a very cool tool. So the first thing I want to do is find my first footnote mark here, and here it is. And I'm going to put a bracket around that number. Again, as the student's reading, it's going to just pause there and they'll know something is different. And then down here, I've got my actual footnote. So I'm going to do the same thing I did in that second document. Note that this continues on the next page and that we're looking at a footnote. Put a bracket around the 1. And now what I want to do is link this number to this footnote. Now, in order to do this quickly and easily, I sneak a little side attack on it. And what I do is I mark this footnote, this text, I mark it as a heading level 4. And you'll see why here in just a minute. So I mark this as a heading level 4. And then I want to go back up to my little bracketed number here, and I want to select just the number, which if you double click on the number, you'll get just the number, not the bracket. And a right click will bring up a context menu. The context menu allows me to create a hyperlink, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm creating a hyperlink to the footnote. So I'm going to select hyperlink, and from this box, I want to choose on the left-hand side, place in this document. This brings up all my heading levels. This is very clever. So this brings up all my heading levels so that I can make that link work. And there it is right here. There's my footnote right there. So I'm going to link to this. I'm going to select this one and say OK. And sometimes you got to dig a little bit to find it, but once you're used to seeing this, it's going to work well for you. And then I'm going to go back to my footnote, my actual footnote, and switch it back to normal font. Because it isn't really a heading level, I just did that so I could quickly find it in the list of text. So I'm going to go down here and find our second footnote, which is right here. Again, I'm going to surround it with a bracket. And note that this continues on next page. That we're getting a footnote. Put that in brackets. Now mark this as a heading level 4. And go find my number 2, select it, right click, hyperlink, and there it is right there. Say OK. Change the actual footnote back to normal font. I'm going to do it one more time. So we'll find our number 3, which is down here, surround it with a bracket, continues on next page. And footnote, surround this with a bracket, turn this into heading level 4, select our footnote, hyperlink, there it is, turn this back into normal font. And we'll do one more just for practice. Brackets around that one. Continues on next page. Footnote, bracket around that. Heading level 4, select our number, hyperlink it. There it is right there. Change this back to normal font. So now, as a student is reading through, when they get to a footnote, it's going to tell them that's a link, and they can stop and go to the link directly to hear whatever this is. They can also just let it read on by. But this gives them an easy way to quickly get to a footnote or to listen to what's in the footnote as they're going along. So that is the third way. So our first way is to use the Microsoft Word Insert Footnote tool, okay, which automatically creates the little number in the space. We're going to copy that text down and put it where it belongs. Method number 2 is inline footnoting. We're using this information, continues on the next page, and footnote to tell the student that there is a footnote below here. And then the third way, which I really like, creating those links within the document to the footnote on the same page so that they can get to it very, very quickly. Thank you for watching. This concludes this video.